Hey everybody, this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG with an update on Mono Green Devotion as a deck overview. As a friendly reminder, if you do like these deck overview content, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below, and let us know maybe what deck you'd like to see covered next. So I'm not going to go in depth into what is Mono Green Devotion. We already have a video kind of describing in detail the different card selections and such. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is going over the evolutions of Mono Green Devotion that has been happening since that original video went up. So this is kind of a continuation of the Mono Green series. Taking a look at Mono Green, a few things are noticeable about what's going on with just the plain Mono Green shell that's on the board. The main thing is, obviously, as we kind of alluded to in the other video, the new thing was the Pestilence Cauldron combo, which was basically, for those of you who don't know, is Kiora and Karn being in play with a Nykthos and a lot of devotion. Usually I believe the number was 14 devotion. What ends up happening is you end up casting Restorative Burst to pick up a copy of Karn and Kiora in the graveyard, and then you continue this loop where you just endlessly wish for Restorative Burst or Pestilent Cauldron out of your sideboard because it keeps getting exiled, so therefore you can pick it up with Karn because of the way Karn is templated, and you just continue this loop where you gain 4 life each turn, and it requires quite a bit of activations and such in some amount of time, and people have been looking for ways to improve that. One of the first innovations that occurred was the addition of the Chain Veil, which makes it a little bit easier mana-wise to keep up, because you get 2 activations out of each Planeswalker before you have to cast Restorative Burst to get more copies of what was going on. And then also the addition of Heart of Karn, or Kiran, to negative all your Planeswalker loyalties to get them into the graveyard, because sometimes you get in these weird situations where you'd have like 1 Kiora and 1 Karn, but then you wouldn't have the ability to get them back with Restorative Burst because there was nothing in the graveyard. So these were both innovations, but the main one obviously being Chain Veil, which has an activated ability that says 4 and tap for each Planeswalker you control. You may activate one of its loyalties once this turn, as though the loyalties have been activated this turn. And that is a perpetual effect for the rest of the turn. Each other Planeswalker you play, you then get to use the ability over and over and over again. So each time you're playing Karn or Kiora, you're getting 2 activations, untapping your Nykthos, going and wishing for more cards, and it kind of shortens the thing in the combo. So the reason why the combo was important is there were some decks and situations where you just weren't going to be able to overpower what your opponent was doing, and this allows you to kind of mill them out. In addition to the ramp game plan with Storm the Festival and Karn with all of this wishboard and stuff, that was kind of where the initial evolution started to occur. The next step in the evolution was people started adding Nicol Bolas Dragon God to the sideboard, or to their main decks. So how do you cast a triple black, blue and red Planeswalker in a mono green deck? The main answers were Oath of Nissa, being able to cast for any colored mana, or getting into it with Storm the Festival. This enabled an alternative win con with the ultimate of Nicol Bolas, so you didn't always have to go through this convoluted combo, overpower your opponent. You could just, kind of whittle them down with the +1 or killing their stuff. And it also gave you this access to a removal spell, which could be problematic for a lot of things. As one thing, mono green, if it doesn't have superior board position, it has a hard time attacking down Planeswalkers. It has a hard time dealing with, problematic creatures like out of Heroic and stuff. So this gave this another angle of attack where you had this removal spell in your deck that just so happened you could cast with Oath of Nissa or Storm the Festival. People then started the gears turning on some other things, and we'll get to the next version that happened to pop. So the next version that happened to pop up people started including Vraska Golgari Queen into the deck. So this was another one of those, you have another thing that you could cast to actually remove problematic permanents, especially out of aggressive decks, which tended to be a problem for this deck. It's something you could get into with a Storm the Festival or Oath of Nissa. And also, it wasn't unrealistic to add some amount of Overgrown Tombs or Blossoming Marshes to your deck to start being able to cast your Vraskas. Another thing that opened up is another, I believe, infinite or quasi-infinite combo with Ugin's Nexus, which basically you cast you wish for Ugin's Nexus, wish for it out of the sideboard. Ugin's Nexus will be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile and take an extra turn after this one. So basically what ends up happening is you Karn, wish for Nexus, cast it. You then use Vraska's +2 ability to sacrifice it, exile it, get an extra turn. You then use your Karn the next turn to wish for it again and take another turn. This gives you another way to kind of set up a superior board position, or just getting far ahead with your different planeswalk activations and stuff. But it also paired with the Chain Veil and everything else to kind of add another element to the deck that people were attacking. So and also having access to black mana allows you to have a fatal push for things like Thing in the Ice and Illuminator Virtuoso, which could be very difficult permanents to deal with and can often lead to mono green having bad matchups or rough matchups against decks like Izzet Phoenix and Boros Uruk. While it doesn't fix those matchups, it certainly helps being able to kill those problematic permanents. And now the final evolution has started to occur. The final evolution that was starting to occur is Teferi, who slows the sunset. Now, how do you cast a Bant Planeswalker in a mono green deck? Or a Azorius Planeswalker in a mono green deck? And what makes this different than Vraska or Nicol Bolas? Simply put, Teferi makes comboing even more easy. Because if you happen to have the Chain Veil in play, and either a Nykthos or some other way to tap for, like, say you have a land with like 2 Wolf Willow Havens on it and a Mana Dork, it's infinite activations. Basically with the Chain Veil, 4 and tap, each Planeswalker gets an extra ability. Well, if you have this Planeswalker who is untapping a creature, a land, and a artifact, what often ends up happening is you untap the Chain Veil, untap a Nykthos, untap some random dork, whether it be a Llanowar Elves or a Sylvan Caryatid, and you just get this situation where you just get these infinite activations of Nykthos. I believe the count is, if Nykthos' devotion is 4 now, 4 or 5, you start getting infinite mana at a much lower count than you would need even with the Chain Veil activations and stuff, which I think reduced it down to 10, I believe was the difference. So you have this situation now where the deck can combo off at a much lower base, and you start getting Kiors and Karns and do your Pestilent Cauldron combo. Another thing this deck added is by adding Temple Gardens and Pathways to the deck, you started getting access to portable holes. So your Karn now has a wishable removal spell, besides Transmogrifying Wand, which wasn't the best thing, but it was an option that the deck sometimes ran in its wish boards. And now all of a sudden you have this situation where mono green has another combo finish. And while it doesn't tremendously improve a lot of its matchups, it does mean that the combo is much more of a threat at a lower base. And once again, still through Oath of Nissa and Storm the Festival, you have the ability to cast these Planeswalkers, or if you have your Sylvan Caryatid, or you've wished for, if there happens to be a treasure vault, you can wish for that and use that to cast the Teferi. So there's a bunch of different ways to be able to cast Teferi, who slows the sun, but it's definitely a new angle of the deck that deck has been going in. As far as how it improves the matchups, I think the data is still kind of being run. As I mentioned with the other ones, Vraska gives you access to removal spells and such, kind of improves the matchup a little bit against things like Izzet Phoenix and Boros Heroic. Teferi is both, an enabler for the combo now, while also a source of card advantage, digging through deep, much like an Oath of Nissa. So, except you can get any card, so you can now Storm the Festivals, and it's -7, isn't anything to, you get an untap all permanents you control during each opponent's F step, and you draw a card during each opponent's draw step. It's a nice kind of game-winning ultimate, as far as accruing even more advantage, but definitely its +1 and -2 are definitely the reasons why things are going well with the deck. But that's kind of where the evolutions of mono green are currently as of the end of August of 2022. This is a deck that has continued to evolve and change over time. Obviously Winota has been banned, which was one of the things that we talked about in the last video. Winota was one of the decks that kind of held this in check a little bit. But, you still have decks that are fairly reasonable against it. Decks like Boros Heroic, various Spirits elements. Mono White Humans can be a bit of a pain for it. And, Rakdos has started to adapt strategies that are pretty reasonable against it, although Mono Green's still definitely favored in that matchup. Is that Phoenix has started to adapt strategies with Thing in the Ice and combo turns, allow it to have game against Mono Green. So Mono Green isn't this unstoppable force anymore, but it does continue to evolve and play and change. There's still the key ways to attack it, attack its mana early. Whether you're killing your mana dorks, you have some way to remove their Wolf Willow Havens, if you're able to, disrupt them with counter spells and such. Blue-white control has an okay matchup against it. I still really don't know what the full story with blue-white versus mono-green is. I've heard people say it's good for control, it's good for mono-green. It's one of those things that mono-green has to get out to a fast start and make blue-white answer all these questions, and if they can do that, then blue-white's having a bad day. If blue-white's able to answer each one of mono-green's payoffs, then it kind of gets to this rough situation. And obviously Karn gives you a fairly good matchup against Lotus Field, just being able to get Damping Sphere or Pithing Needle or any other number of things to shut down their deck, God Pharaoh's Statue, etc. One of the downsides is you are giving up some amount of, your wish targets and such. But, I do think, as we kind of mentioned in the last video, that maybe Karn was sometimes taking up too much of the wish boards. So, it's kind of nice to get it away from like 9 or 10 slots. So you still have options to play cards like Fatal Push and the Golgari version. You have access to some more reportable holes out of this Bant version, etc. So, the deck is continuing to evolve and change. And, it's still a very powerful force, and probably, as I said in our top 5 video for the month of August, I do think it is the deck that the entire format kind of revolves around, even if it isn't always the best deck in the format. But that's kind of our update on Mono Green Devotion. Hope this kind of helps everybody get caught up on where the deck is at, and, the innovations that are going on with the deck in the format. As always, this has been John for Pioneer Nexus MTG. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for the next video.